We'd like to ask Councilmember Scott if he would lead us in a prayer and invocation. Pledge of allegiance, excuse me.
Our most gracious and loving Heavenly Father, thank you so much for all of the blessings that you've given us and for this wonderful place that we live. Help us in our deliberations tonight to do the things that are most pleasing to you. We ask in your name, amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilman Scott.
Yes,
We have no presentations, proclamations, or recognitions tonight, so we'll move on to the approval or adjustment of the agenda. Does any council member have anything they'd like to remove?
I do, Madam Mayor. I'd like to remove items 3 and 5.
Well, that's mine.
That's removing from the consent agenda?
Yes.
Any more adjustments?
Madam Mayor, we need to add an amendment to budget and ordinance to allow the installation of ADA accessible doors at Town Hall.
So we're adding it to the consent agenda. Any more adjustments? At this time, I entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Second, all in favor? Thank you. All right, it's time for our public comment section. Lisa, do we have anyone signed up?
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to remind you to please state your name and your address, and your 3 minutes will start after that.
Bill Easley.
Would it be all right if I give each of you a handout?
Absolutely.
Appendix?
Thank you, sir.
What I'd like to ask y'all to consider this evening is sending an ordinance.
Bill, if you'd
Oh, I'm
give your
sorry.
name and address for the
Bill
record.
Easley. I live at 3485 Airport Road. I own, or am a part owner in about 5 properties here on the island. I'm sorry. What I'd like for y'all to do is consider rescinding an ordinance about 2 years old. It's the fire flow ordinance. I know back in the time when it came around, it was probably more aimed at some of the mini motels, structures, the huge habitat houses that were being constructed at the time. And I think the council has that under control with some other ordinances and the parking ordinances and things like that, bedrooms. But we're having a situation now that I think we're getting some unintended consequences. That we're having homes as small as 1,700 square feet of heated space back here on the main part of the island that are going to be required to have a sprinkler system installed in the house. Those sprinkler systems cost you anywhere from $8,000 to $20,000. You got to run a 1-inch water meter, from the town, larger than the 3/4 that we normally do. We also have, that increase in expense, and then you're going to probably be in a situation where the fire department's going to have to add at least another person on to be able to go through and do all these inspections of all the sprinkler systems after they're done, because it's not something that the building inspections department does. It's what the fire marshal does. The other thing to consider is just like this last freeze that we just had. We had pipes in houses that burst. We had a lot of homes that winterized their homes over the winter, drain the water out. Well, you can't drain the water out of a sprinkler system. And if we had a power outage as well as freezing weather, any of these homes would be subject to the sprinkler systems, freezing and bursting and destroying it. It's admirable to do things to try and save lives, but I don't know that that's really something that you're gonna get that much of an effect out of, not for what it's gonna cost. If you took it to an extreme, you could outlaw swimming in the ocean, and then nobody in the South Brunswick beaches would drown. But we have people to drown every year. Or you could reduce the speed limit to 10 miles an hour, and even though we have wrecks, we would have many fewer wrecks and much less damage. So I'd just like for you to, if you will look at that handout that I gave you there, it's simply a matter of this fire code requirement only comes into play if the town council adopts
Thank you,
the
Mr.
ordinance.
Easley.
So you could simply drop the ordinance, and then this goes away. Now, I don't know of any other town in Brunswick County or New Hanover County that has adopted this and having to sprinkle all these homes.
Thank you.
I thank you very much.
And we have Katrina Purser or Roseanne Fortner.
Lisa, hang on one second.
I'm sorry.
I think the council may like to,
Yeah, Madam Mayor, we get staff take a look at that and bring back some information in the next meeting. I'm not, I was aware of the sprinkler systems in the houses and whatnot, but I didn't know it was causing any problems or anything. Be great.
yeah. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Okay, Ms. Purser.
Katrina Purser, 5001 Oakland Boulevard. I'm here on behalf of the Beach Preservation Society. As you guys know, it is time for us to start planning for our annual fundraiser. It is our 19th year doing it. It's going to be April 21st, starting at noon and going until 2:30 at Island Way. If you want to donate, we have a few things on the table that you can kind of get an idea of what we're kind of looking for. Anything that we can have donated as an auction item would be very appreciated. If you want to email us at beachoki@outlook.com, we can arrange a time to pick up or a place to pick up. But everything has to be in by the end of March. If you are a member, great. You received a letter in your email stating when it's time for you to renew your membership, and also a chance to buy 2 tickets. Tickets are $30 each. And then Roseanne has some tonight if you wanted to go ahead and buy some. If you're not a member, shame on you. We all love our beach, that's why we're here. If you are a member, you can get tickets now. If you're not a member, then you can't get them until at least March 19th, if there's any left. Of course, because the venue is so small, we can only sell a certain amount of tickets. And then we also have a couple other things going on. You guys can come see us on February 24th. We're going to have cornhole set up, and that's the Mardi Gras parade. And then on March 1st, there's a local beachfront property or restaurant that is donating 20% of all the food sales to the beach preservation. And to identify who that is, you can go to our Facebook site or you can contact us.
Good job. Thank you.
And Lynn Gullidge.
Good evening, I'm Lynn Gullidge. I reside at 126 Southwest 5th Street. And really just had more of a question and some basic comments. I see that there is a suggested calling of a special meeting to once again talk about tree and vegetation. And many of us have sat through quite a few meetings. There's been, I don't know how much work done on this. There was a previous draft put in front of Planning Board that went back and forth and then revised again and discussed in public sessions. And so I guess I'm asking a question more than anything, if there was a flaw in the work that's just been recently done, or if there's some new issues or new problems coming up. And I wasn't sure who proposed the meeting. It says I, but I doesn't show who I am. So, but just kind of curious, you know, because it's a very important topic, but at the same time, it is a very contentious topic. At least I've found it to be running off where We do have continued new construction, which will continue as long as permits are issued and the builders are following, you know, the building requirements. But just kind of curious of what's behind this, or what's kind of pushing. What is there a key issue, or is it just the whole general issue once again just being kind of brought back up for what, rehashing? I don't know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I answer this, Madam Mayor, real quick?
You may.
What brought this back up was we had a lot of people talking about clear cutting, trees going down, our stormwater, the rules that's in place. But one thing we haven't done as a council is sit down with contractors and everybody else in the town and had a nice meeting to discuss what can we do. That's never happened. It's went before everybody else, but town council's never been part of it. So we want to have a meeting with everybody, and if there's a way we can save the trees, that's what we want to do.
Hey, Madam Mayor. To answer your question, Lynn, I proposed the reexamination. As Jeff has indicated, there was a massive public pushback about the adequacy of the ordinance. Clearly, it's complicated with stormwater on one side and tree preservation on the other. We found several other municipalities that have moved forward on this, and we'd like to at least have a civil and hopefully thoughtful conversation, and we may be able to find a better ordinance, or not. We'll see. And I think that's the motivation behind it. And it was publicly presented, so there's really, I think, a need for us to do that, which is why it's on the agenda.
And I'll just add a little bit by saying that the council also felt it would be advantageous for us to include the builders and the realtors and surveyors, everybody just meet one-on-one and have a discussion, basically, is what it's about. Anticipate a good, positive meeting. All right, Lisa, any more?
That's it.
Thank you. Moving on to the council reports, and I'll start with you, Councilman Bach.
Yes, I have two points of information and then a brief report. I want to ask Mr. Kelly about the POW funding and talk a little bit about the accumulated funds and the plan that we have to disperse them. I know we have in excess of $400,000 in POW funds. I'm curious as to when they'll be expended, what percentage of our roadway will be impacted, when council will see that. So if you could just walk me through those steps, I think the public would also.
Would it be a better item to put on the agenda instead of in a council member's report?
Well, basically, we've always reviewed this during the budget process.
Right.
And it's one of the items that y'all decide on what we do. We have a contractor engineer group right now doing a study on the streets that comes back at the end of February. And then in March, y'all will have it to review before y'all have taken the top 10 streets they identified. Y'all go back and look at them and identify what y'all think the priority is. And then we discuss it during the budget process about the monies to expend and where you want to place it.
Would you like it added to agenda, or you want more details?
Well, actually, I had intended to propose it as an agenda item for action, but was asked by the town manager to make it a question. And I'm content to leave it as a question. I don't need a motion. I'm just seeking information. Yeah. So at some point in April, we'll have a plan which has been vetted, which will be presented to council.
Yes.
And is the theory of this that we're accumulating the funds in order to have an impact in terms of scale, in terms of the way we fix the roads?
Yes, sir. Usually we retain it for 3 years. That is what's been done in the past. And then we look at offering it all up in one time.
So the argument is that gives us a greater efficiency with the dollars expended.
Yes, sir.
Correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I also have a question about the realty contract, which we will consider this evening. And I want to put it in the framework that I think...
Excuse me, Councilmember Bob, that's more appropriately discussed in closed session.
I'll rephrase, thank you. I would like us to consider, as we think about our realty holdings, a paid parking system in the future. I think it is both inevitable and frankly necessary as we expand on the mainland. And I would like that to be a consideration. Is that fair enough, Council?
Yes, sir. What type of, I couldn't.
I would like that to be a consideration as we think about our land holdings.
What type of marketing system? That's the part I couldn't.
Paid parking system.
Okay, thank you.
I think we're familiar with that issue. Lastly, as council adopted at its retreat, a strategic plan is one of the goals. I am working on that with my fellow colleagues individually, and I hope to come forward with a streamlined format, the foundation of which will be the central concerns council expressed at the retreat: beach renourishment, peer development, a sustainable economy on the mainland, et cetera. So I thank my colleagues for their time, and eventually, at the end of this process, hopefully, we'll have a plan that we can project forward for the next 3 to 5 years that details where we're headed. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Bell?
And me.
Councilman Scott?
Well, I have no report, but just want to thank everybody for coming out tonight.
Councilman Blaylock?
Just one thing to pass along. I was stopped by a lady the other day who gave us great compliments for our police department. She was in a situation where she needed some help, and the guy stepped up and gave her a hand. So if you want to pass that along to your guys there, Chief, she appreciates it very much.
Councilman Wyckoff?
We were all at the Citizens Academy, the start of it, and I'm sure the town manager will give us a little bit more details. So that will be the end of my report.
Very good. Only have one comment. I happened to be at a class on Saturday, and the man fell out in the floor, or one of our citizens that live on Oak Island, and I actually called 911, and our fire department, along with the EMT, was there within 2 to 3 minutes, a good 5 to 10 minutes before the ambulance got there from the county. So, and they had it all under control before anyone else even walked into the building. So that actually, it was really impressive to actually see them in action, and I was felt real safe after that, knowing that if you need any help on Oak Island, it gets there in a hurry. And kudos to our fire department for that. Yes, Jeff.
I have one more thing I forgot, Madam Mayor. Our first town hall meeting of 2018 will be at our next council meeting, which is March 13th. It will be a short presentation of things that are going on the island, and then it'll be open up for questions for y'all to have a conversation with town council, and council have some feedback for y'all and see what's going on for this year. So that'll be the very first one. So everybody come out.
Be an interesting concept. It's the first time I think I don't know if another town's ever done it, but we're hoping to have 3 this year, where we can interact with our public and move forward in a positive manner and get more information out to the public in an easier way. So I hope everybody can come and spread the word that that's the kind of meeting. Hopefully it won't be boring. And we're looking forward to it as council. All right. Consent agenda, I entertain a motion to approve as amended.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Unanimous. We'll move on down to the items that were pulled off. The first one is number 3, approval of the emergency operations plan, hurricane preparedness, evacuation and recovery plan, and adoption of a resolution to adopt and implement the Town of Oak Island Emergency Operation Preparedness, Evacuation, and Recovery Plan. Entertain a motion to
Can you bring that for discussion?
read. Do I need to restate that whole thing?
No, you do not, Madam Mayor. I have some simple, straightforward questions, again, for Mr. Kelly. So the plan appears to be quite detailed and quite enumerated in terms of the SOP, the Standard Operating Procedure. It has an incident command structure, which I'm familiar with. I have some simple questions. So are the ICS trainings annual or biannual? How frequently do we train?
Well, we've had several training processes that go through the fire and the police. Public Works and Utilities and Services go through training as well. We have not refreshed ours on the public utility side, but we do have the certifications of 300 and 400 that's required. And Steve, I don't know, do y'all do yours annually? Yeah. Once we retain the certifications.
Okay. And training is via tabletop, or is it a field-based exercise?
Ours was tabletop.
Mm-hmm. And have we done a tabletop in which you've been forced to move the Emergency Operations Center off the island?
We have done some mock drills probably 3 years ago. We have not done anything lately. We did a mock drill yesterday internally on Hurricane Matthew again. Basically, this was for the community rating system for the insurance provider that Steve needs to get documentation for.
As you know, that's one of the most difficult ICS exercises, is to move your command center in the middle of a crisis. So I would hope that we continue to focus on that. Let me ask an additional question about the evacuation of the island, if God forbid that eventuality were to take place. Do we have any new guidance from the state with respect to the timing of an evacuation? And I'm thinking about some of the near disasters, actual disasters, which occurred on the West Coast where evacuation orders were delayed. Do we have new guidance on that from the state?
None that I know of. The county goes through it. They open up the evacuation, West Brunswick, South Brunswick, North Brunswick. Once those are opened, then the mayor talks to the mayor of Castle Beach. They start getting together, seeing what we want to do. Information starts coming in. Chris Alsamo and Greg, they defer everything that they have into staff so we can see what's going on through the center, and then they determine on what the...
Right, and I think the plan is very clear that the decision will be made locally after consultation with county officials and state officials. I guess I'll leave it as a concern that we probably should think about the timing of that and the mechanics of that, especially if we're dealing with one bridge at the start of hurricane season. That might be something we want to look at, because whatever plans we have are based surely on two bridges, so probably need to rethink that. Thank you for answering those questions.
We actually had that scenario come up during Matthew, and all of that was taken in consideration, including the bridges. It is a little bit more complicated than I even imagined when it came time whether you call or not call. So I doubt the state would have any recommendation. They kind of leave it up to municipalities because they don't want to be liable.
They have different times and different rates that we can get people on and off the island. Depends on what time of the year it is.
Yeah.
If it's July 4th week with the population we'd have then, it'd be totally different than what we have later in the year.
Brian, do you have a comment?
Well, just by statute, as far as the state of emergency, which would entitle you to evacuate, by and large, it's, the state defers to the local governmental entity, whether it be a county or municipality. So if we were going to have some additional guidance, it would more than likely emanate from within the town in conjunction with the county.
Yeah. And an interesting fact, now that we're on that subject, the head of the North Carolina Emergency is a property owner on Oak Island. So,
Fair enough. My point is you can't have enough training or planning in this area, and it is best to anticipate the worst case beforehand as opposed to trying to problem solve it in the middle of a crisis, as clearly those communities in California failed. So
I was making the point simply that we have the authority to do that here. We don't, the state won't mandate that, and
yeah, that's clear in the plan. What I'm suggesting is if there were to be some national guidance from safety organizations about timelines, that would be something useful to consider. But it would ultimately be our call.
certainly.
any more discussion? At this time, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the town of Oak Island.
Hold on.
There was one other item on the consent agenda that Mr. Bach.
Have we approved that?
I have some questions for Mr. Kelly. I will be brief. With respect to the ATMC contract,
I'm sorry, are we going to take action on the?
Yeah, we
emergency
need to
operations
take
plan?
action on that before you move to
Yeah.
the next one.
I make a
Madam Mayor,
motion to-
I'd like to make a motion to adopt the Town of Oak Island's updated emergency operation plan, hurricane preparedness evacuation recovery plan, and the associated resolution as presented.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Unanimous. Okay, number 6.
number 5, ATMC. And again, thank you for being so gracious, Mr. Kelly. I have several quick questions. I'd like to know for the public record what the pro quid pro is in this contract. So ATMC has right-of-way easement granted to them by the town. What do we get in return?
Well, this has been brought up before. During this process, the town granted them to install their equipment and apparatuses to allow for another vendor to be able to come in and do internet and television and those kind of things, and give the citizens a different provider to choose from. We have talked to ATMC about getting some equipment for the town to be able to utilize. We are using some of the vac stations as hub areas that we've asked them if we can do some Wi-Fi availability, hotspots, and those kind of things. They're still working on a proposal to give us, and are doing a sort of a check and balance thing for vac station number 7 currently. They also want to lease an area for their equipment to be stored and to operate from. So we are looking at having that included in that and provide services for the vac stations instead of going through Time Warner. ATMC is willing to provide it to us at no charge. So it is some small things that we are trying to get.
Fair enough, and that will be reduced to writing at some point?
Sir?
Is that going to be reduced to writing, this understanding?
Yes, it should be, yes.
Fair enough.
When you do the lease for number 7.
I'm going to ask this question again, and are you comfortable with the performance bond of $5,000 that's in the contract?
Yes, sir. And one thing that we've already had happen, one of their subs went through one of our water mains. We repaired it immediately. There was no complications. Their insurance company has already sent us a check for $16,000 for the repair. So it wasn't a problem that we had with them.
Okay.
They want to make sure things go as smooth as they can.
Indeed, it would be in their interest. Thank you.
At this time, I entertain a motion to approve the right-of-way encroachment agreement as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. Committee appointments. Emergency Services Advisory Board, one unexpired term ending June 2019. Mr. Peter, forgive me if I butcher this name, Grinzen? Okay. Par 3 at South Harbor Committee, one unexpired term ending January 2019. Mr. Ronald Kratz. Mr. Kratz. Moving on along to the administrative reports. Mr. Kelly, you're up.
Yes, ma'am. As Jeff brought up earlier, the Citizens Academy has started. We had the open session, and then we have gone to the fire station. This week we go to see Mr. Gregg over there to the police station for his presentation, and Water Rescue will also be joining for a little brief description of what they do. And then after that, we move to the rec center, utilities, and the only tour this year we're doing is for the public services to show them what we have around the island to provide. We had 21 people participate, so we'll try to put it on again in 2 years from now, and hopefully we get the full house again of 25 that we tried to get before. So if anybody's still out there and want to join late, there's still a possibility for you to get in here. We have room. We're still trying to find volunteers for the town. We have asked for police, fire, and administrative volunteers. You can get up with Rose here at Town Hall if you'd like to volunteer. We've been trying to get it for about a 6-week period now, and we've only had 6 people sign up to volunteer. 2 for the police, 2 for fire, and 2 for admin. But it's something we're trying to look at to be able to provide some sort of convenient services for the citizens, and it's something that we're still asking for people to volunteer. We met with DOT, the mayor and I, last week. We had a few topics that was discussed probably about 4 months ago. One of them was a sign to the entrance to Town Hall. We've always sort of been told we couldn't do something like that, but we have now met with the right people, and we've been told that we can do something like that. So that's a good thing for us. And the good thing about it is they even told us they probably have a little money to pay for it. So that was something different coming from DOT.
And we could do wayfinding signs possibly.
Yes. Also, we talked about the Par 3, the signage that we've asked to have there. They agreed that we could do that. And before the meeting started tonight, we finally got the information and contact numbers for everybody for us to be able to reach out to get these kind of things. The information signs that we'd like the town to go through and write up a plan of everything that we'd like to advertise and point people to, and then present it back to DOT for them to make the final decision on that. Also with DOT, we had the street crossings. People had asked 58th Street there at the red light to be able to cross over to the north side. DOT reached back to us and said, where do you want them to go? Because it's just a grassy knoll on the other side. So that's something that council's been talking about, trying to do some sidewalks and things in that area. And so DOT said once that happens, come back to them on that one. We had also talked about putting a crossing in front of Town Hall. They do not like that. The reason being is a turn lane in the middle, and if somebody's crossing halfway and then they get stuck, they're an obstacle to traffic, so they don't approve that. We did talk about the one that we have here at the Cabanas. The location right now is in front of a residential lot, so they're gonna move it eastward about 30 feet to put it there in front of the parking lot to try to make that a little more accessible. Carolina Beach does flashers and everything for theirs. It is approved by DOT. It's just something that the town would have to pay for. So we'd be looking at that. The last crossover that they discussed was at Middleton. There at the end of the sidewalk where you go to the little golf cart beach access. That one, they came back and asked sort of a difficult question. They said, would the town be interested in putting a three-way stop sign there to help control, to make it safer for the people crossing? So that's something we'll have to look at and think about before we do something like that. We also talked about, let's see, what else? Several things. The signs, when I went back to, for that, the par 3, that is something, the greenback sign that they allow us to do. So they have the paperwork on that one already, so hopefully we can get that up here by probably April or May. The pier, I don't know if everybody's seen, but it's been posted that the crane has arrived at the pier to start the demo work. The rest of the crane will be here by Friday. Next week, they'll be putting some more safety fence and everything to keep the public away and start demoing the pier. They will demo from the ground out to the low tide line with the crane, and then we'll start putting it back. They'll put the pilings in, and then they'll start doing the deck and boards and building the frame. We hope to have the first 250 feet built by the end of April. That's a good thing to get started with. That's what we're hoping. And we're hoping the contractor will release it so we can open up for the summer, at least the first 250 feet. With the understanding that the crane still will be parked on the end of it, but we don't want to pay a mobilization fee again back in November. Sand project, we continue to work on the FEMA Emergency Dune project. We've had to make some adjustments to the heights to try to get enough sand to finish the project. We're still currently planning on finishing the project, but it's going to be about 1.5 feet lower the height of the berm wheel than what it was previously planned. We have, as Jeff mentioned a minute ago, for the town hall meeting, we have our project engineer coming. People's been talking about the sand color, the size of sand and all that. He will be here for the meeting to explain everything and answer any kind of questions that the public has. So he will be available. We've also submitted our shallow draft inlet permit. They call it the SDI-5. Basically, that's for Lockwood Folly, and that'll give us the ability to be able to dredge that material and place on the west end of the beach. The Wilmington Harbor project that's been going on that places sand on the east end of Oak Island. They're putting it back out for bids in March. If it goes through, there will be work going on this year during turtle season, and they will have to take special precautions to get that done. If it doesn't happen, then it will go back in November for a rebid. And I believe that's it, unless y'all have anything else.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Our town attorney, Mr. Eve.
We have an item or two to discuss in closed session, but I have been asked to speak at the North Carolina Beach and Inlet Waterway Association semi-annual meeting on the meetings April 23rd and 24th. My presentation will be on the 24th, and it's regarding the Nyes v. Emerald Isle case, which deals with the rights of the public on the dry sand beach. You recall, Madam Mayor, that the town contributed to our effort when we were in front of the North Carolina Supreme Court on that case, and I encourage you guys to come. It looks like there's a lot of, there's a shallow draft, some issues on the agenda that'll be addressed. And if you do come, I'll warn you, I'll be nervous because my 11-year-old daughter is going to go. So just thought I'd share that with you. It's in Pine Knoll Shores this year on April 23rd and 24th.
Yeah, we're working on getting a council member to attend. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
All right, old business, consideration of proposed amendments to the town charter. I want to remind the council that we did have a public hearing on this last month, and there was no speakers. So I'll entertain a motion to adopt the proposed charter amendments as presented.
Madam Mayor, I make a motion to adopt the proposed charter amendments as presented.
Second, please. Second. All in favor? Thank you. Unanimously. Moving on to new business. Number one, consideration of appointing citizens to serve on only one committee at a time, and I'll turn the mic over to Councilman Weinkoff.
Yes, Madam Mayor. As I was looking through all the stuff for committees, it came across to my attention that it's set up where, to me, council needs to have integrity and make sure that when we do something that there's no conflict of interest. If everybody can remember back when I first came on board, we had a husband and wife. They did a great job, but one sat on the planning board, one sat on the Board of Adjustments, and to me, that was a conflict of interest. So I wasn't for approving that person to go back in that position. And then, as we were doing our UDO and all that with our CPAC committee, we made it clear to them that if you were going to be on the CPAC committee, you had to resign from any committee you were sitting on. So I consider the town has 4 major boards. The Board of Adjustments, the Planning Board, the Rec Board, and ABC. There's nothing to stop anybody in this town to sitting on the Planning Board or the Board of Adjustments at the same time. There's nothing in our charter or committee minutes to stop that. And to me, it seems like if we've got 4 major boards and we want to stop and make sure that this council always has integrity, that we eliminate and just have people sit on one board. If you're on ABC board, you're on planning board, you can't sit on the other board because each one of them relate with the other. And there should never be any kind of conflict that comes back to us. And that was just my observation I saw.
Any more comments regarding that?
I think it's a sensible ethical consideration that we should adopt, but I think the conversation may be too narrow. I, for one, would like to see if there are indeed the 4 major boards, that appointments be term limited and not unending, just as our terms are limited and then we face the voters for re-election. I think that would be an added measure of integrity. It would firewall us from conflicts of interest. And I would suggest to my colleague that we might consider amending his motion to include term limits for the 4 major boards.
Well, it's open.
We've made a motion yet.
No,
haven't
it's
we?
open discussion. That's why I wanted to have this.
If you're going to do it for those 4 boards, you might as well do them for all the boards.
Well,
You can't serve on 2 for any of the boards.
and we can do that. I'm fine with that.
But I mean, do we have anybody that serves on the Board of Adjustment and the Planning Board?
No, but there's nothing
So
stopping
shouldn't
from
that-
anybody from doing
Well, I
that.
mean,
Well, your
we
vote
are.
stops it when we come
Well,
through.
our vote, but what if you get another council in here?
Well, if they,
Your vote would have to
well, if
stop
another
the clock.
council came in and they wanted to do that, they just delete that.
But right now, we've got people that sit on the rec and the planning board, and both of them review each other. So there's conflict right there already.
The Rec Board and the Planning Board?
Yeah.
I just don't see the issue with it.
Well, if you got somebody wanting to build a new rec center and the rec goes before the rec board and then it goes in front of the planning board and you got somebody that sits on both them boards, there's a conflict.
Well, I think at the larger level, whether there's a conflict or not, removing the appearance of a conflict driven by a rule that says, in effect, you can't serve on multiple boards and you can't serve on any of the 4 boards for more than 6 years or 2 consecutive terms, sets a standard. Now, my colleague, Councilman Bell, is right. Future councils could change that, but they change it at their own risk, because to me, it sets an ethical standard and removes any appearance of conflict of interest on the part of any individual or any council.
And Madam Mayor, I just want to say, and I understand Councilmember Wyckoff's concern, and it's a matter of semantics, but to Councilmember Bach's point, I don't think this council or any council that I've served for has ever knowingly appointed someone who had a conflict of interest. Right. There's a difference between the appearance of a conflict of interest and a legal conflict of interest. If anyone sitting on one of these boards had a legal conflict of interest, they would be duty-bound to recuse themselves.
Right.
But since there's going to be minutes of this discussion, I just felt compelled to say that I am not aware of any council, this one or its predecessors, of knowingly putting someone on a committee with a legal conflict of interest. And anytime I preside over any of these board meetings, if there is a potential for conflict, we hash that or vet that out, and there's been occasions when a committee member would recuse him or herself from voting. So just so the minutes, I totally hear what you're saying, and the appearance of conflict is often enough, because the public, you know, we're here to serve the public, but I just wanted the minutes to reflect that there is a legal distinction between a legal conflict of interest and the appearance of a conflict of interest.
And that's what my point is the appearance. There should never be anything that looks like this council's doing something.
Understood, and I think that was Councilmember Bach's point as well.
It is my point indeed, Counselor.
Madam Mayor, if a motion's made and this is passed, this be retroactive, or would it be as of tonight?
It'd have to be going forward.
Okay.
I don't think it would, by virtue of the motion, remove anybody that would.
Okay.
Do we have, just out of curiosity, I know it's in our pack, but just so the public knows, do we have many of that incidents where there's double people on different boards? Same person on
There's
different
about
boards?
3 or 4.
3 or 4.
Yeah.
Okay, the staff has no recommendation because this is a policy decision for council, and is there a motion? Does anyone make a motion?
There's a motion, and I would like to amend the motion to include term
There's no
limits.
motion.
No motion right now.
Go ahead.
Would you like to make a
Make your
motion?
motion.
What does this council feel about terms?
Well, there's kind of two ways of looking at it. If you've got a,
Good person.
if you've got a good volunteer and they're doing a great job, would you want to do that? And then on the other hand, I can see where it might be advantageous to do it. So
The council changes it could change, therefore you could change anything out there by your vote or not vote, or non-vote.
So the members of the committees work at the pleasure of the
Of
council?
the council,
Exactly.
exactly.
So at any
That's
point
my
in time,
point.
if we see a conflict, we can take
That's
care
my
of it?
point.
When the name comes before you and you think they're on too many boards, or have they been on there for 10 years and you don't, I would think any council going forward that would be, I think that's how it checks itself, basically. I mean, I'm just saying, I don't know.
I'll go with making a motion and see if it goes, that we allow someone to sit only on one committee at a time for the town.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
I want to amend that motion to include term limits for the 4 major boards. And the contrary position, if you like, is that while we all would trust indeed in the good judgment of council's future to come, having a rule safeguards us from potential political machinations as people are appointed. It also removes the possibility that someone could sit on one of the 4 most powerful boards for 12 or 14 years beyond any one council. And I think it safeguards us. So I would offer that as an amendment to my
So, Lisa,
colleagues.
would you like to read back that amendment so everybody has a
I have a
clear
couple
understanding?
things to add.
Well,
Okay,
wait a minute, what would be reasonable
Well,
for?
that's a good question. I'm
the term
proposing 2 consecutive appointments, so that
2.
would be 6 years.
that was one of my questions. So there's a motion to limit, to allow someone to sit on one committee at a time, and then a motion to amend to set term limits for 2 consecutive term limits for the 4 major boards that were mentioned earlier.
That amendment the motion hasn't been amended yet, but that's what he's proposing.
There's a motion to amend. So we need a vote on the motion to amend, and then I would have some questions to clarify the motion anyway.
Well, Jeff, you can amend your motion if you'd like, without a vote.
Now, are all of them the same? Are they 4 years, 3 years?
All of the town boards and committees are 3 years. You make appointments to 2 appointments to the airport commission, but that's not a town board. But those are 4 years.
Would you consider 3 consecutive terms? And take in mind, because some of these planning board members who have been working on Pine Forest, this project's taken a long period of time. And it's Go ahead.
I'm sorry, the planning board already has, in the ordinances, a limit. So planning board is limited to 2 consecutive full terms or 10 full years together. So somebody can be appointed to fill an unexpired term and then be appointed 2 more times.
So
they're
they already
limited to
have a
10 years.
limit.
They have a limit. And
So any
again,
other-
We mark the limit for all 4 of these boards to match at? I mean,
Easiest.
that would be the easiest thing to do, because since they already had theirs in place.
It would certainly be consistent.
Yeah.
It would be,
Would
but,
make more sense, yeah.
well, I'll make my argument, and then, you know, I think that 10 years is too long. I would consider 9, but 6 is preferable. It's longer than the lifespan of a councilman, and I think it ensures that we're going to have a check against someone sitting in a position of power for too long. It also will ensure that we get a turnover in terms of talent and approach and perspective, and I think that's healthy for us. In addition, as we've
None of
noted,
them sit in a position of power, though, except for the Board of Adjustment.
well,
They make recommendations to us, all of them do.
they're influential,
I'm-
fair enough.
I'm in favor of term limits, like the plant, but I'm not in favor of not having them serve on 2 boards. Because we do have 4, like you said, 4 or 5 that do. I mean, that would certainly be up to us to be able, I mean, if you don't want somebody serving on 2 boards, you don't appoint them to 2 boards.
Madam Mayor, it may be helpful, and I don't want to add burden to staff, that if the council directs staff to inventory where we are on each board, the status.
They have, it's in the book, it's in our agenda. It's in the agenda.
Well, 2
It shows when they roll off.
Maybe there's some more detail that we didn't know. For instance, the planning
terms,
board.
that would be 8 years.
Show where they roll off, okay.
It's in there.
You said 3 and 3.
Yeah,
I can support 8 years. I think the important thing is we have term limits, and we have a rule, an ethical rule in place that prohibits someone from serving on multiple boards for an extended period of time. So if that's what it takes to get consensus around the 2 issues, I could support
It
that.
doesn't.
I think it's becoming very confusing.
I mean, it has when the existing member's term expires, but it doesn't say
When they started.
when they started.
Object to withdrawing your motion and
Except for
let
the
the
planning
staff
board.
bring back a more detailed plan along those lines with the term limits included for consideration.
Yeah, they're gonna bring it back something. Where it has,
How would y'all feel about that? Just next month?
I'm sorry, I missed
Have a
the-
more detailed now that we're talking about term limits, and then we'll know, it's less confusing and we all understand what we're voting on.
in other words, you want
Next
to know
month, come back.
how long somebody's been on the planning board or the board?
Well,
Each
no,
one-
have the term limits included in their recommendation?
Okay.
Well, I don't know that we need that data, because this, correct me if I'm wrong, Counselor, but this rule would be prospective going forward,
Yes.
right? So it's setting the rule in place with the 2 conditions that you cannot serve on more than 1 board, and you can't serve any longer than 8 years. And where people are now, it doesn't matter, because this is going to be prospectively applied in, when would that be,
The
Counselor?
next time someone comes up for a committee
Next
appointment.
appointment after the terms have expired. So we don't need all that data.
I personally am not comfortable with my self-knowledge of, there may be a board that it may be beneficial to have a longer term. But I agree with you, 8 years is a very long time.
Well, I would prefer 6, but I'm willing to compromise with 8.
so you're wanting to review it?
I'd like do we have any committee expirations coming up between now and April anyway?
Yes, in March, actually, there's Board of Adjustment terms are up in March.
Well, if we were to address this policy on the agenda before we go to committee appointments, our new rules would apply to that appointment, right?
Correct.
So maybe
Okay.
we could do that, just,
And that way you can review it and give
well,
us.
yeah, I'd just like to discuss it collectively with this.
That's fine.
We don't have anybody that serves
Well,
on the Board
I
of
think there's
Adjustment that
enough
serves on another
detail, and
committee.
it's an important decision that all council members
Sure
need
do.
to have a full understanding
But it
before
is
they
an
raise their
important
hand,
decision.
yea or nay.
And I'd rather have him on board with,
I'm on board with both concepts, I'd just like to think through it a little far, I mean, you know, the term limits is kind of a new, not sitting on the same board is one concept,
Right.
term limits is another. I just want to look at the impact, think the impact of that through, and talk about historically who served for how long as well. And if there are going to be no appointments until the council addresses this item, then if there are appointments in March, but this item's addressed on the agenda first, then whatever the board passes
Carries
will
over.
apply to those appointees.
And so that's my next question. March is to be a town hall meeting, not to have general business.
We'll have a little bit at the beginning, won't we?
We'll have, that's what we talked about, a little bit of, to address and then straight to the town hall.
I think this item would take 10 minutes.
Okay, so we can put this on as an old business item, committee appointments,
Yes.
and then I would still have your Board of Adjustment
Are you
appointments to
both
consider.
okay with doing that next month? No, are we amending, are we withdrawing our motion? You, Jeff, you're the only one who has a motion.
Yeah, because I'd rather have Brian,
And we can say we're holding a committee appointments in abeyance until this item's addressed. I mean, the council can do that. Sounds like it's not going to be an issue anyway.
okay.
It would be an issue. There might be somebody affected.
If we don't have enough to have a quorum on one of those,
No, if you enact this rule, it might affect the Board of Adjustment applications, is what I'm saying.
but we can, if we address it before any future appointments at the next meeting, we'll be okay. Right?
Yes, but committee appointments come before old business.
Then we'd have to suspend the rules and
Okay.
as long as everybody.
I'm just looking for direction.
My recommendation would be allow us to, staff to look at it. We have, I think, sufficient direction from council, understand their concerns. Come back with a recommendation, and that be placed on the agenda, even if we have to suspend the rules to do so, prior to any future appointments on any boards. David, are you comfortable?
That's fine.
Lisa, are you
Happy.
Yes, that's perfect, thank you.
Okay, so just, Jeff,
I withdraw my motion.
just Mr. Botany to,
I'm not comfortable, but I'll defer to my colleague. I do like council's statement that appointments will be held in abeyance until we make a decision. This is a major policy decision.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
you are free to make a motion if you'd like, I'm just,
I'll just state my opinion. Thank you, Madam
okay,
Mayor.
thank you. All right, moving on to consideration of calling a special meeting to hold a workshop on the tree and vegetation ordinance. Jeff, I think you've addressed that, so I'll let you have the mic as well again.
Yes, Madam Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to schedule a special meeting for Thursday, March 15th at 6 p.m. here in the council chambers to discuss the tree and vegetation ordinance.
Second,
Second.
that's March 15th at 6 o'clock.
I second that motion.
Second, all in favor, everyone? Favor? Okay, perfect. Thank you. It's unanimous.
Favor?
I thought we had something on the 13th.
We put, we had already
They corrected.
talked about that, March the 15th.
Yes, sir.
What time?
6 o'clock.
Everybody good? This time I'll call for a motion to consult with the town attorney on pending litigation to discuss land acquisition and to discuss the terms of a contract for employment, real estate services pursuant to North Carolina GS 143-131A.11A.5.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. This time I'll call the meeting back to order. Mr. Kelly, I think you had something for us to consider before we adjourn for tonight?
Well, basically, we had been.
Oh, wait a minute, excuse me. I need to make a statement that there was no
Oh, yes.
action taken in closed session. Now go for it.
We've gone through and looked at the town as a whole, and we're trying to do some more community efforts within the town. Charlie brought this up to me a minute ago about doing some different zones off the island as well. They were in the regular current traffic patterns of the police force, but if we can go back and look at putting those inside a district, we can. But we were asking to see if council wanted to take on one of the areas for themselves to monitor it, just to ride around, give us back comments or concerns. Basically, the police department will be riding down these at about 15 miles an hour. They'll be looking in the right of ways, writing down anything that you see, vehicles, construction going on, and we're trying to get back to the basic community policing that y'all talked about before. If they see somebody walking a dog, spend a little minute with them, ask them what's going on in the neighborhood. See somebody, me and Chris stopped the other day and helped a lady carry a dresser in, because she was struggling to get out of the back of her car. Just those kind of things, try to get back in the community.
Does that mean they'll increase their patrols on the side roads?
Yes, each district or zone, however we'd like to call it, they would probably spend about 2 hours a day of their 12 hours a day in there. The rest of the time, they would be doing the main thoroughfares as they did before, going out Long Beach Road up to the red light, and then they would also be going up to Lowe's Foods on Midway Road. Those kind of things. But we would spend 2 hours a day in each one of those, just solely Pacific, just for that.
Okay, and what would you like from the council?
If y'all would like to choose an area, if not, then you don't have to.
Everyone's had a chance to look at the map, I'm assuming?
I have, Madam Mayor, and I'll take Zone 4, which is where I reside.
Madam Mayor?
I'll take the ghetto off the island.
What zone is that?
It doesn't have one.
It doesn't have one.
It doesn't have a zone?
We will, it wasn't,
That's fine, sure.
What are you, 2?
That's fine.
2? 2 for Loman?
I don't know, everybody, what's,
Wait a minute.
I don't know what
Mayor
zone
took
I'm in.
6.
What zone is
Bob
Bell
took
in?
4. Who?
Bell?
What street are you?
23rd.
You were in 3.
Okay, I'll take 3.
3, 2, 4.
Well, seriously, what?
1 and 5 left.
That we all live in
1
the
and 2.
zone.
We need a zone
Oh,
for South
5.
Dakota,
I'll take 5.
for South
And I'm 6. David?
Lyman, you're 1 again, sir.
One, what is that area, what area is that?
Middleton West.
Okay, that's fine.
So I'm 5, okay.
You're 5. What's Jeff?
Jeff is 2.
2. So has that got you covered?
Yes, ma'am.
Very good. Looking forward to that. Does that mean we patrol our areas? If we see
If
something,
you
we
would like to
text?
patrol it or
we
have
call
the,
you? Or call
you would
someone?
call Cheryl and turn in anything you see in the right of way so she can start a project for that.
Awesome.
And then we will go from there.
Can I mention one thing real quick? I don't know if it's appropriate for this, or we talked about each department having its own promotional, is that for another time or another place?
I think it's a time and another place.
Okay, all right,
Maybe have it put on the agenda next time.
okay.
One question about that, Mr. Kelly, just so anybody who watches this will understand and we'll know in the minutes. Do we get to call in if we see tires parked on the street, or are we limited to trash on the side of the road?
If you see what on the side of the street?
If parking out issues?
Well, that's something the council's still addressing. We are going to have a ride around.
A field trip.
we
Yeah,
go-
but I'm talking about if they're parked
Got that
on the
my
street.
calendar.
If
Would
they
you
are
write it
parked on
down
the
for
street,
me?
yes.
March 2nd.
Police matter.
And who's got my area that I live in? Who's that? You do? Oh, okay.
I do.
Well, while you're at it, there's a pothole at Kazaa and Oak Island Drive, big enough for a dinosaur to hide in, okay?
Okay.
So I'd like to,
I will, David, did you get that from council? Okay, or do I need to send you an email regarding that?
I got it.
Okay, very good. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor? Shout amen.
That's a wrap, as we say.